What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Debbie Royale YouTube channel. We are here to talk Week 8 of the NFL season. Jordan Addison is at the top of the cards here. We're going to talk about him right away. We're going to give some game previews. We're going to give some fantasy starts. So stay tuned through the intro. Make sure you like and subscribe while that plays. All right, Week 8 is here. I remembered which week it was this time, so that's good. That's a good start. First
8 weeks.
thing that yeah. I mean, really, the further you get, the harder it is to remember. But we're here. We're first going to start with Jordan Addison. So Jordan Addison last week, 7 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 3 on the week. The question is Jordan Addison a wide receiver 1 for as long as Justin Jefferson is out? He's had some up and down play. And then I guess what happens when Jefferson is back if Addison does continue this?
Yeah, I think his ascension while Jefferson is out is really just kind of what we were hoping to get throughout this season, to where he's making the big plays and then he's kind of phasing out KJ Osborne at that aspect as well. So when Jefferson does come back, I think Addison basically maintains what Adam Thielen has been for the last couple of years in a target share role in comparison to Jefferson. It's just Jefferson has kind of grown his role a bit. That's the only contingency there. But with Edison's big playability, he can have 4 or 5 catches a week and still put up at least wide receiver 2 numbers.
Yeah, I think that's a solid way to put it. On the graphics it says rookie wide receiver 1. I think there's a decent chance outside of Puka Nacua. I think, but I also think there's a real world where Addison outscores Nakua throughout the back half of the season, because that's kind of how we see some, rookie wide receivers that start a little bit slow, kind of come on towards the back half of the year. I do want to put a contingency on this though. They get Green Bay this week. Green Bay has been good against the pass. They rank 8th in opponent passing yards per game. The matchup's not really great. They don't shadow Jair Alexander, but I think that Addison will get his fair share of matchups there. So I don't necessarily have huge expectations for him this week, but I think top 20 is a realistic goal. And I think you're kind of starting him with confidence at this point, right?
Yeah, he's started to also. Obviously, we kind of saw it with 1 pick and 1 touchdown last week, where he's starting to become a bit more of a go-to when I need to throw it kind of guy for Cousins, at least while Jefferson is out. And when you almost beat the guy for the interception the drive before or quarter before, and then you win it for a touchdown later, you're going to build trust with Kirk Cousins. And I do think he's going to just have a solid week. I think wide receiver 20-ish is a good, at least average floor for him. I do think he can get a touchdown and really bump up those numbers.
Yeah, for sure. I think he will find the end zone. I don't know where are they this week? Are they in Minnesota?
I want to say yes.
Yeah, I'm not positive. I should know that, but I was going to say I don't know if the weather will play a factor in this, because I know weather's a little iffy across the board. The Chiefs Broncos game is expecting like 14 inches of snow now, so we're going to start to get into some weather games. That's for sure.
Exactly. I can tell you, if it's in Green Bay, there's nothing right now. Sunny, cold, but sunny.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, next point. We're going to talk about Calvin Ridley, because a conversation needs to happen. He's the wide receiver 58 in points per game since week 2. And the question I have, can you start him at this point with confidence, or is he relegated to a flex in good matchups? Is this a good matchup? What are you doing with Ridley?
I think he's relegated to flex and good matchups at this point. I'm kind of putting him along the same tier as like Gabe Davis right now. And that's ridiculous, but it's what he's given to us. He's had 2 really good games, week 1 and then a London game. And that's all we've gotten from him. He's been pretty much phased out for the rest of it. Kirk has been electric since week 1. And Zay has come in every now and then and done some things, but really, I think ETN has kind of exploded a little bit the last few weeks too to take away some passing need. But yeah, I think he's a really big boom bust play for you. So if it's a noon game, he's at best a flex consideration. But if it's a Sunday night, afternoon, Monday night, you're kind of sitting there like, well, maybe I'll play him just to see if I can get that 30-point game from him.
Yeah, the last time he was this inconsistent was all the way back in 2019. Obviously, there's a year of no football in there, and he only played 5 games in 2021. 2020 was his breakout, but that year, he was seeing, 10, 9, 10, up to 14 targets a game. And so, if you don't have that volume with Calvin Ridley, I don't think that you have as much upside. I wanted to mention that this is a fantastic matchup for Christian Kirk. Slot receivers have done really well,
Yeah.
the Steelers, so I don't think we're going to see it this week either. I would not be super comfortable with Ridley in my lineups. Of course, we think that, and this could be one of those like squeaky wheel situations where Ridley hasn't seen a ton of work. He might get a little more, attention this week in terms of they've shut down tight ends as well. Evan Engram's been a huge part of that passing attack. It could be a really week, but this is the point that we're at, right? Where we're not sure if it's a good week or not. So it's disappointing just from where he was getting drafted.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of, I mean, workload, he's been getting targets. It's just, he's not, he's also being viewed as the top option. He's the guy that's staying on the outside the whole time. So he's getting the top, defender. And Steelers, they are getting kind of beat by wide receivers and wide receivers only right now. So it is one of those, yeah, Kirk's going to be good, but can Ridley really have that big game? I do think it's possible this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that one. Another note on Ridley, he's running all of his routes like to the outside too. So he's an outside receiver, but he's working the boundaries a ton, which Trevor Lawrence is good at throwing over the middle of the field. That's why Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram have been so good this year. So I wonder if they start to incorporate some more digs for him to come back across the middle. I think offensive line play is a big part of that, getting to like a backside dig or something like that. But overall, it's been disappointing for sure. All right. Well, we talk about teams a lot on here, and a couple weeks ago we were saying, oh yeah, the 49ers are the best team in the NFL. They look like the clear-cut favorites. Maybe, I don't know that we're making definitive statements like that, but I think right now I'm comfortable saying that the Chiefs are once again the clear team to beat in the NFL. They look like the most well-oiled machine, even if they've had their ups and downs. Mahomes has been a little iffy at times this year, and I still feel pretty comfortable saying, yeah, that's the most well-rounded team in football. Do you agree with that?
The most well-rounded, I would go still with the Eagles, but the most like battle tested, the one that I'm confident can win any game, any scenario would be the Chiefs. I just
Okay.
think they've been through everything, and even every year we see someone different. We see them no matter what, they're able to compete, and the defense has stepped up mightily this year. So I think they're a very, very close second to the Eagles. But if it again comes out in the Super Bowl, I'm picking the Chiefs again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it, it it's the Patriots effect, right? Everyone wanted to pick against the Patriots through their dynasty, and there were years where you're like, they don't look that good on paper, or it looks like teams have caught up to them, and then no one ever did. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about the Chiefs this year, where like they have a rookie wide receiver in Rasheed Rice who is stepping up and being a big time player for them. When they have guys that can do that, you've still got the pieces. Travis Kelce, as much as people want to say, okay, he's lost a step, he's not as good. He's still very much so the best tight end in football. Like bar none, I still don't think anyone's even close to his level as far as pass catching goes. And the running game has been good. The defense has, punched maybe above their weight, but they're getting decent play from the defensive line. This is just a team that I think is already gearing up for another Super Bowl run. And I don't know that we're going to see a low for them, moving forward. They get the Broncos this week. I think that's a win. I don't know. I think it'd be exciting. It'd be an exciting time to be a Chiefs fan, as it has been for the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to go against that. I mean, like I said, when you're that battle tested, you're the odds-on favorite every time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into some game previews. We're going to start with the Texans at the Panthers. The Panthers are 3-point home underdogs, and the over under is 43.5 when I made this. It might have changed a little bit here and there. This is really the CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young matchup that I think a lot of people had circled early on when the schedule was made. And I think that there's a good reason to watch this game because the Texans have done some nice things. The Panthers, not so much, but Bryce Young is starting to take those steps. So he looked good the last time we saw him. What are you thinking about this game? Do you think this is going to be a watchable game first, Randy?
Oh, no, I do think the I think the Texans kind of run away with this. I think CJ Stroud is going to absolutely dominate this game. I think he's a locked in quarterback one. He's had a couple down weeks the last couple weeks, so people are doubting him a little bit there, seeing teams might have figured him out. I don't think that's anywhere near the case, and especially this week against the Panthers, I think he's going to pretty much lights out against the secondary. And can Bryce get some things done on the other side? Yeah, I think Theon's obviously a start, but that's about all I would touch on the Panthers side. And for the Texans, I'm full sending Stroud and Collins and probably Tank because it seems like he's going to be back. Running backs, well, no one knows what's happening with that right now, so we'll just move on from that.
Yeah, I do want to mention the Panthers have low key been pretty good against the pass this
Mhm.
year. That being said, I agree. I have Tank Dell in a DraftKings lineup this week in a DFS lineup, so I'm kind of feeling like it's going to be a big day. This is going to be a Stroud statement game. I think Stroud felt a little bit slighted by this team, and he's the type of guy to go out there and just put it on them and keep pouring it on if they get up early. I'm going to take the Texans to cover the 3 points, and I'll take the over because I do think that the Texans put up, 28 to 30 points in this one. I think the Panthers can kind of cover the rest there.
Yeah, exact same here. Just like I said, complete domination by the Texans. So getting 27, 30 points is almost a lock in my opinion. And I think Bryce is good enough to get, 14 points there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next one. Cincinnati Bengals at the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers were 3.5-point favorites. That probably is going to jump back up with the news that Brock Purdy is going to play. Over under in this one is also 43.5. Bengals are coming off a bye. Their defense has been up and down. I think that could be problematic in this game, but their offense has started to get it going. Joe Burrow has looked healthier. I think this is going to be the first time that we see him, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase all fully healthy in this game, which is kind of exciting. And Joe Mixon obviously is still healthy as well. On the other side of things, 49ers do get Brock Purdy back. Brock Purdy is coming off two mediocre is probably being nice, not good performances, especially down the stretch. Purdy had a late interception, 2 late interceptions, I believe, last week. He did not play well against the Browns. I think we kind of excused that because it's the Browns and their Browns defense had been really good up until last week against the Colts. How are you seeing this game play out, Randy?
Um, an air show by the Bengals and hoping to lean on CMC on the other side. I don't think Mixon's going to be able to do a ton this week. I am in any league I'm able to. Going to sit him. I think he's going to need to have a touchdown to be even flex relevant this week. The 49ers are getting torched through the air and are stifling the run game. There's no way the Bengals see that and say they're going to give the ball 30 times to Joe Mixon. They are going to throw the ball at least 40 times this week. T. Higgins and Chase all the way. And like you said, both first time they've both been healthy. Chase has had his explosion game. I think it's time for both of them this week. And CMC is going to dominate the other side. It's just if Brock can do enough with Ayuk and Kittle to cover. I'm actually going to take the Bengals with the bye week coming in. Full practices. They've had their quarterback the whole time. This 49ers team was planning on using Sam Darnold. You say what you will about what you're going to do differently in practice between Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy, but I do think Brock Purdy's better. So I do think they're going to be coming out swinging, but it's Bengals all the way.
Yeah, I think as this line It probably creeps back up to 4.5, 5.5. I think it opened at 5.5, if I recall. I think I'd hit the Bengals to at least cover that. I think that there's a good chance that the 49ers get the ship righted this week. On the other side of things, and you mentioned Mixon. Mixon's tough for me this week because I do think this 49ers pass rush should be able to land pretty quickly. I think Mixon could be a good dump off candidate this week. I think the Bengals are also going to have a little bit of quick game aspect to their game. I think Jamar Chase on screens is going to be super prevalent. I do expect a good performance from Burrow and the wide receivers, but I wonder what the pass catching work for Mixon looks like this week with Bosa
Yeah,
especially getting home.
that's gonna be his saving grace, which is why
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, where you drafted Mixon this year, you're not almost like forced to play him, but a lot of places he might be your RB2 or RB1 even at this point. At that point, you got to play him and hope he gets 5 catches. It's just
Yeah.
that's fine. It's just if you can, it's one of the games where I'm trying to avoid him just because it's such a prevalent advantage to attack the 49ers through the air in comparison. And this is a coaching staff that is going to look to adapt and try and take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna go uh, Bengals to cover. I am gonna go over in this game though.
Yeah, I'm going to take Bengals to win, so obviously cover and the
Yeah.
over.
Okay. Cool. All
I
right.
definitely do think this is a get right game for the 49ers, but I just think firepower wise, I think the Bengals can still come out on top.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, last game we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are 4-point favorites. The over under in this one is 38. This is an interesting matchup. PJ Walker is going to start again at quarterback for the Browns, and last week he had a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs, but they were still able to score a ton of points. On the other side of things, the Seahawks have looked good and bad at times this year. I think they kind of go how Geno Smith is playing. I get a little concerned about how Geno Smith is going to play against this Browns defense in this one, to the point that 4-point favorites, I'm a little iffy on. Randy, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I I definitely don't love the 4 point favorites. The Brown defense has been ridiculous this year. They're playing a ton more man, so it's kind of getting me off the Tyler Lockett, who's really dominating against zone. JSN increased in kind of workload last week. DK Metcalf, if he's playing and fully healthy, I think he is going to be their saving grace to move this ball because the Browns' rush defense has been pretty good as well. So I do think this is definitely more of a grinded out game, not this high scoring affair that the Browns had against the Colts. So the -4, I'm definitely going against. I'm going to take the Browns to cover that and the under. I think that's how they win that.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting. Kenneth Walker seems to be set to play. Tyler
Mhm.
Lockett is very much so questionable. He didn't log many practices this week. He may have already been ruled out. Actually, I haven't seen
Not
news. I don't
yet.
think he has, but um, by the time you're watching this, he may have. So from that side of things, I do think Jackson Smith and Jigba is startable this week. I think DK Metcalf is one that I could actually see JSN having a better game than Metcalf in this one for the reasons that you kind
Yeah,
of stated. Um, are you playing Ken Walker? I
I
don't
have it
think.
basically the same lines as Mixon for me.
Yeah,
You're probably going to need some extra catches and a touchdown to be like your favorite thing. The other side of that, though, I am much more. I'm. I'd rather have to bet on Walker breaking away for a touchdown than Mixon breaking away for a touchdown. So
that's fair.
I think he's definitely flex relevant this week, if anything.
Yeah. For what it's worth, San Francisco ranks third in opponent rushing yards per game. Cleveland ranks seventh. So,
Okay.
two top 10 rushing defenses on that side of things. I'm going to go, man, it's really just very difficult for me to bet on PJ Walker. That quarterback play
Mhm.
has been pretty rough. So I think I'm going to take the Seahawks. I hope this line moves down a little bit, like to 2.5. I'll feel a lot more comfortable with it. And I think after last week, I hit the under on the Browns last week, and that just did not happen. I think I'm gonna hit the under here. I think this is more like a get right for their defense, but I think the Seahawks pull out a close game.
It's fair. I do think the way they won last week is definitely unsustainable. That's why I went under for a Browns win. I do think
Yeah.
it's getting over. Now we're relying on PJ Walker to make another late game heroic, throw on fourth, make it happen. I'm not believing in that again.
Yeah. All right. Last thing we're going to do are against the grain fantasy starts. If this is the first time you're watching, these are kind of guys that wouldn't slot automatically into your lineups. Obviously, we're not going to say, start. Uh, I don't know who's someone that slots Christian McCaffrey. Start Christian McCaffrey this week.
Very
We're
good.
not going to say that, but we will give you some options. Might be flex worthy, might be like a super flex worthy play. Randy, you're up first. Who is your fantasy start? Who are
Yeah.
your fantasy starts?
Well, me going first is less funny. Just because Christian decided to do two people this week, so I made a joke that I was going to do two people. But I already talked about the one, CJ Stroud. I think he's an absolute stud this week. I'm playing him over a ton of. There's a ton of quarterbacks that I would be much more comfortable playing him than that. Even Mahomes this week. If it's going to be that bad of a weather in Denver, I, if you have both, I think it's definitely a viable option. But I think for me, he's top five this week. So
Okay.
I'm definitely pushing him up there, especially with Jalen going up against Washington should be all right. But like I said, Mahomes in that kind of weather game, Allen against Tampa, we saw that wasn't great. Uh,
Mhm.
Tua against New England was what I was going to go with, and that one's absolutely scaring me with pace of play and everything. So getting Stroud in here with not the best matchup, but I think this is a game that he's circled and he's ready for to come out firing with all of his weapons again this week. And then Gus Edwards, he's definitely an RB3 for most people this week. I have him as a high end RB2. I think he gets in the end zone. He's been pretty consistent getting that, 50, 60 yards. But he's pretty much dominating the touches at this point. He's being the RB1. I do think they are considering bringing in someone. So if you have Gus Edwards, I'm definitely playing him this week because if they get it in Derrick Henry on Monday, you're screwed. So if you got him, play him, trade him, whatever you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Um, I like the Stroud call. I do think that it could be a top 5 week. He's like we talked about, competitive dude. I think he wants to go put it on him. So, all right, mine. I'm going with 2 Patriots wide receivers, which at face value sounds disgusting, right? Like as I was doing some research on this, it felt pretty gross. But the two, Demario Douglas and Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne, 93% of snaps, both of the last 2 weeks. So 56 snaps each. And last week, Demario Douglas played 62% of snaps. He was out there a ton. He was involved in the passing game. So these two players combined for 43% of all targets for the Patriots last week, 7 for Kendrick Bourne, 6 for Demario Douglas. They were both fairly productive. 4 receptions for 54 yards for Douglas, 6 receptions, 63 yards, and a touchdown for Kendrick Bourne. This is a game where I think the Patriots are going to have to throw the ball to kind of keep up with the Dolphins this week. I do think that the Patriots defense will kind of damper some of what the Dolphins have been able to do because that's what Bill Belichick likes to do. However, I think this is going to be one of those games where we could see it be a little bit higher scoring than even anticipated. So Kendrick Bourne is the one that I would 100% slot into my lineup. Demario Douglas is the one where if I don't have a ton of options, I I have 3 guys on. There's only 1 or 2 teams on bye, I think. So it's not a huge bye week, but I would maybe pick up Demario Douglas, stash him, play him in a pinch. But these are 2 receivers that I think are trending upwards for the rest of the year too.
Yeah, I think Bourne has worked his way into at least a flex consideration every week. He's been very consistent, been a go-to guy, and has kind of been Mac Jones proof of sorts, just
Mhm.
because of his kind of target share in this offense. Um, yeah, it's just for me. It's like I said, I'm banking on this being a low-scoring game, but with Bourne, I still think that's easily a startable option still.
Yeah, yeah, for sure on that side. Douglas, I'm curious to see his involvement.
Douglas, you need some open. Yeah, he's definitely outpacing everyone else. Parker's looked rough. Thornton had caught a ball last week, so progress there. So
Mhm.
you can add him into you, so you can have all three. But I do think Douglas is definitely a guy to be looking at on the waiver wire this week. See how he performs again, and if we're going to get that kind of reps, that kind of target share again, he's definitely waiver consideration worthy.
Yeah. For what it's worth, too, the Dolphins coming into like Wednesday had 5 corners, very specifically on the injury report. Jalen Ramsey might be back. I'm not hugely concerned about that. First game back,
Mm.
I don't
He's
think
not
he's going to be.
shadowing for sure first game back.
Yeah, and I actually think he'll probably be in the slot for the most part, which could take Douglas out a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see what if he even
Just
plays.
say how much
He,
slaughter are the Patriots really running?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. That is fair. So, all right. Anything else to add before we get out of here, Andy?
This hopefully is a fun week of football. I do think adding in a snow element's gonna make that red zone just pop a little bit more. But it should be a good slate of football. Definitely better than we've had a lot of these weeks. Bengals and
Mhm.
49ers by far the game of the week. Gonna be an absolute shootout.
Yeah, for sure. Um, as always, if you guys are listening on the podcast forum, head over to YouTube, drop us a like, and make sure you subscribe. And on the other side of things, if you're watching on YouTube and you stuck with us this long, subscribe to the podcast, Dev Royale. We will be back next week. Thank you guys for watching.